Yeah. Hey. All right. Hey. Yeah, I mean.
Swiftly about to take off.
Hey. Please do remain calm. About to run against it and with a little bit of soul. No time.
Welcome to Please Remain Calm podcast. I'm Ben Gonzalez.
And I am Daniel Gonzalez. Listen, as always, at the very beginning here, the opinions that are expressed here on the Please Remain Calm podcast are our own. They do not reflect the opinions of the Los Angeles City Fire Department or the Los Angeles County Department of Health Services. Also, right off the bat, jumping right in, I want to mention our sponsor, Power Solar. P-O-W-U-R, Power Solar.
Logo right over my chest.
Logo's
guys.
right there. I've talked about it every episode for the past month or so.
I haven't talked about it at all. That's why I'm trying to make up for it by just wearing the shirt. You know what I mean?
What a guy. What a guy.
Penn and Teller on these ads. I'm the teller.
So we got a podcast and a billboard today, folks. But seriously, in all seriousness, Power Solar, I can't speak highly enough about them. You know, like I told you in the past, when we found out that Isela was a fan of the show and that she worked for solar, we had been talking about getting solar, my wife and I. We did it. I mean, it's been, 2 months or so. They come by, they look at all your electrical bills. They look at the layout of your house. They figure out how many panels they can fit out there, how many panels you need for the power that you use right now. And they look further into the future. What are you planning on doing to your house? Are you planning on buying an electric car? Things like that, and try to figure out how many panels you're going to need in 5 years from now. They do all that, and they do it respectfully, and they do it with love and care. And when they came in to install everything, I mean, it was... hey, we're here to install your solar. And 3 hours later, they were done. The yard was clean. They didn't bug us at all. We didn't hear them drilling or anything up there. It was fucking amazing. I can't recommend them enough if you guys are thinking about going solar. Isela Bonata was our sales rep and is a fan of the show, the one that got us into it. I want to give you her information right now so that you guys can call her if and when you're thinking about going solar. It's Isela Bonata, 310-435-0231. You can look at her website. It's www.solarenergyqueen.com, or you can email her directly at solarqueen.isela, that's ISELA, @gmail.com. If you guys are thinking, even contemplating going solar, give her a call, let her come out, put a package together for you so you can actually get a good feel of what it's going to take for you to get it. And she has a really good track record for getting people approved and stuff. So give Isela a call. Power Solar.
She's awesome, and you might even cop one of these hot shirts, you guys.
You might.
You
shit.
have no idea.
I didn't put my hat on.
You know what I mean?
Oh, shit. Going to the Dodger game today.
Yep.
All fucked up.
Right after this, we're off to a hot start here, you guys.
Yeah, so, I got to get all the mojo. Jesus. All right.
We all set?
And we're back.
All right.
What's up, Ben?
There was something else I wanted to say during that commercial, and I can't freaking remember now. Great.
All right.
Did you get to flip your switch yet?
Huh?
Did you get to flip your switch
They
yet?
came and did the inspection, like the city of Inglewood has to come and do an inspection and everything, make sure it's all set up. So they did that yesterday. They came and did that yesterday.
Oh, now I remember.
So we're probably 2 days away from flipping the switch, yeah.
Nice. And it's also nice to have a solar company as a sponsor because we get to flex that we have houses.
Yes, every episode.
Yep.
We're not renting
pretty cool
anymore,
start,
bro.
you guys. You're not listening to any chumps.
All right, so today's podcast, it's something that we haven't covered before. And it's something that affects, everybody when you get married and have a kid, or not married and have a kid or whatever, but
People just have kids.
you see people walking around with a cute baby and you're like, hey, that's a cute baby, beautiful eyes. Oh, he looks like you, looks like him, all this shit. But you don't realize, like, at least I didn't, man. When Bernie got pregnant and I watched that entire process of her being pregnant, going through the changes that happen with your body, literally growing in size, clothes not fitting, the way it affected her body, but not only that, affected her mentality too. Just, your body's changing, you're feeling more bloated, you're feeling all these changes and shit. And it can drag you down, a little bit. And that's just like the half of it. You know what I mean? Going through actual childbirth. When you really, really get down to it, we show up, like I told the story of the first baby I delivered, and baby just popped.
Episodes ago. That story's amazing.
Baby just popped the hell out, know? And a lot of times out in the field, that happens. You're getting there because they're getting ready to go to the hospital because they've been pregnant and, contractions are starting, they're timing. And so you get there and they're like, hey, contractions are, 2 minutes apart, and you're like, okay. Oh, and my water broke, 2 hours ago. Okay, let's fucking go. And then you get back there and you always got to look and see where you're at. Because if the baby's crowning, we're a little bit more serious. Or if you look down there and there's a foot popping out or a ham popping out or something like that. Now we're into something serious here. Typically when I have a pregnant female who's about to give birth, if that head isn't crowning, I'd tape your knees together until you don't push, and we drive as fast as we fucking can to the hospital.
Fast.
I do not want to deliver a baby in the back of the ambulance, and I promise our patients don't want us to deliver their baby in the back of the ambulance either. But baby come out when baby want to come out, and your labor can be 30 minutes and you pop it out after you get there, which happens if you've had multiple babies, kind of grease the skids already and everything kind of just comes out. But you can be in labor for 2-3 days, sometimes. And there
like our mom with me.
And there's so many complications that go along with that. Mm-hmm. Was she in labor that long?
Dude, 50 hours. She never lets me hear the end of it.
And he was a
Friday, done
14-pound baby.
Yeah, a big mess. I was actually the smallest baby out of us.
Yeah.
I just took the longest, you know what I mean? We should introduce our guest because it sounds like we have like really killer like production right now and baby effects going while Danny's describing this. But we actually have a baby in the studio, you guys. All right. So our guests are comedians and married couple and podcasters and parents, Rachel Laforce and Alex Gettlin. Say hi, guys.
Thanks for having us here.
Thanks for doing
And Jonah
it.
Gettlin is joining us.
Jonah making his debut.
Chilling. Well, his debut on our show. Apparently, this kid has more credits than I do.
He's got podcast credits.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
his cooing has been on our podcast a couple times.
Yeah, he's a true LA baby for sure.
Right?
For sure.
I'm getting an agent any day now.
I know. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, so we have a childbirth journey story to get into here.
Yeah.
We kind of set the table a little bit. If you remember a few episodes ago, Danny tells the craziest on-scene childbirth story. This is in a hospital. This story.
Yeah.
But again, just because you're in the hospital doesn't mean everything's going to go, perfectly. It's better than being in the ambulance.
Oh yeah.
Believe
Tell
me,
me about
you
it.
don't want to be in people always think there's like a cute story of I was born in, the kitchen or a restaurant or something. No, fuck that. I even do a joke about being born in the backseat of the car, but no, the hospital is the place to be, but let's get into this.
Yeah. I'll let Rachel start.
All right.
Well, okay. So here's the thing. First time baby. And not me. I've been a baby before. First time for Jonah. And it was just wild because, like your body's changing. There's all this stuff happening. And if you're pregnant, this is my only piece of advice on this podcast. Don't go to the internet. If you have
That's good advice just in general.
Just in general, but specifically if you have a baby and you have any amount of anxiety, don't go to the internet. Because, as routine as what's happening in your body, as routine as what's happening to deliver a baby, it's also like there's a million different ways that routine can go down, right?
Right.
And so, and even women that have been like, oh, I had, 3 babies, but every labor was completely different.
Yeah.
So you're kind of in this like really bizarre place of like, okay, I guess we're just going to like figure this out. And your body's giving you so many cues like over and over and over again that you're like, is this a good cue? Or is this one like, I should tell my doctor?
And everything's a mystery. If it's your first time and
yeah. It's, I'm still recovering is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
There's
sure.
like legit PTSD because it's like, you're worried about like your own, or not worried, but you're so aware of your own mortality.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm a pretty like spiritual person. I feel like I do like a lot of check-ins. So it was the first time where I was like, at any time, lights out. This is all over, And then you're like, okay, now I'm also responsible for this person that I'm growing that you feel like connected to, but at the same time, like not, it's just a weird thing. So, you've had that experience for 10 months,
right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, most certainly. And as you can tell here today, like loves to move. We call him Boogie because that's like all he does. He like kicks a lot with his feet. So like, I was fully aware of him from like month 7 on.
Sure.
Like it was like, go ahead.
I'll just tag in because you were saying before about your wife, right? How, like when Rachel was pregnant, I'd always kind of known like vaguely, women get pregnant and their bodies change and that's what it is. But
they grow a human, bada bing.
we
baby pops out.
any dude who's never had a pregnant woman at home, and you just don't know, man. You have no fucking clue.
Give you a whole new respect for your wife.
God.
Dude.
Oh, yeah.
A whole new respect.
Made me love her more, respect her more. I mean, because I know how cranky I'll get if I like am hungover or just don't feel well. And
you eat some, you eat some cheese when you're not supposed to, and the Gouda bloats you up, and you're just like, oh my God, don't talk to me. I got to shit.
I can't handle any inconvenience whatsoever.
And it was just incredible to watch it every day.
Yeah.
And just that was the first big takeaway from me, is just kind of knowing like, oh, I wonder what this will be like, and just so sobering to be like,
shocking, man. Almost it's like, holy shit.
I wouldn't do it if men had to get pregnant. Sorry,
no way.
Yeah, we'll adopt.
But that's the other thing, like as much of a gift as it is, right? Because especially now, and
it's called labor for a reason.
Totally. But we don't call the 10 months that you're doing it labor. And, so anyway, it's just where I have a bunch of bits that I'm writing about it now in my own stand-up where I'm like, to me, I'm just like, wait a minute, this is just a thing we've been doing. Like, I feel like I need, you should have to interview somebody. Like, are you psychologically able to endure this for 10 months during a pandemic?
Yeah.
Is this something that you'd like to do? I feel there's this very real intrinsic need, right, for women to be like perfect in many ways, right? Yeah. And I know there's things that we place on men too. That's just not the experience that I've had, right? And especially with pregnancy, it's like you're supposed to love it and enjoy it, and it's beautiful. And it's like, no, dog, like you're sweaty, like shit is happening to your body that you're like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah. And then everyone's constantly telling you look amazing, look, you're glowing, look at you.
Oh my God, how do you feel? And then it's like you feel guilty because there's plenty of people I know that have struggled with fertility issues, things like that, and we got married later in life. I'm 35. And so, it was like the fact that like all these things I thought I'd always wanted, but I was like, if it's not in the cards for me this go around, I'm okay with that. So being like, oh, holy shit, these things are going to happen. Then it's very high stakes.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
The stakes, very high.
Yes.
So we get to about week 38. And which if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know what that means. Typically you're pregnant for 40 weeks. That's a long time. Yeah. And they used to, back in the day where it was like, well, you just had a baby when there was no like inducing labor or anything like that. Right. And he was so active that I'm like, oh, for sure he's going to come early. Right. Also, fun fact, if it's your first time having a baby, typically they come late because your body hasn't done this before. And like you were saying, right? It's like once you've done it, it's like a luge. Like it's like, okay, baby, we know what we're doing. First time, your body's like, we don't know what this is.
What is happening?
There's so many things that have to it's shocking to me that so many people that we do just so somewhat easily procreate because of all of the systems that do have to align in order for it to happen, right? So I'm like, surely this guy, he's coming early. It's all going to be good.
Yeah. Right.
And we go in at week 38 and our OB, who's like, shout out to Dr. Dennis. I mean, what a homie. I will say, if you're in LA and you're looking for a doctor or an OB specifically, Dr. Dennis Idua, Dr. Dennis Idu at Women's Spectrum Health downtown, like 5 out of 5 stars, 10 out of 10, aces all around. And I picked him. You get on, Oscar and it shows you everybody, it's in your network and whatever. And I saw a photo of him and I was like, that's my guy. Like just based off of like the energy that this man was like emitting in this photo, I'm like, that's my guy.
Wow. The importance of a doctor headshot.
Yeah. I'm telling you what. Who knew?
Yeah. Rachel's
Till you get some good looking asshole.
She's very big on like just, her intuition with that stuff. And she's like, he just seems really friendly. And he was very friendly, but just like big smile.
And
seemed
grounded.
Warm.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of people in medicine that like there's a lot of ego in medicine, right? Because there's a lot of money, there's a lot of power, and I was like,
for OBs too.
Yes,
yeah.
And I was like, that's a guy that like I'm just going off the photo. I'm like, I think he seems like grounded and bright. I'm gonna go there, and
it's so important to have an OB that's kind like that and understanding and has a real sense of what you're going through at the moment. And can relay that in the way he talks and interacts with you.
Totally.
I mean, there's a lot to be said about obviously the medicine aspect and making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. But mentally being there and being able to calm you and relax your nerves and know how to talk to you and stuff like that's important.
Yeah. I want to know, like, you know, I want you to be a doctor first, and then immediately I want you to be human.
Yeah.
Like I need you to be both.
And it's important to be that as a firefighter and paramedic also.
Oh yeah.
You know, obviously we're not doctors, but we're giving patient care the same way. And a lot of times, especially with things like that or anxiety calls and shit like that, there's not really much that we can do for you other than be a calming presence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that gets overlooked a lot of times, especially when you've been on the job for a long time. You get a little jaded with shit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go off the topic with that, but it's so, I've never been in that scenario. I've never even had to call 911 for anything, but
You're awesome.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
But you know, Danny, I remember on an earlier episode, I heard you talk about how like you'll show up to an accident, like someone gets hit by a car and they're like, I can't go to the hospital. I can't afford it. And you're like, dude, I don't think you realize how bad you're in. He's like, I can't even imagine being in that situation, like trying to explain to someone, like, I get that you might go broke.
Yeah.
But you got to do it, man.
It happens all the time, dude.
Or people having heart attacks and they're just in complete denial of it.
Yeah.
Or somebody could be
because you're literally you're meeting people at their most I guess like highest peak. I mean, you know what I mean, and
all the time.
And that's and we'll get back into the story right after this.
No.
That's kind of what I tell young guys all the time is you got to realize, man, that this call, a lot of times we'll get a call, we'll look at it, and it looks like bullshit on the face of it. 25-year-old with chest pain. Okay, dude. You know what I mean? You probably don't have, you know, would you party too hard last night?
Yeah, I was like, you took too much Molly, you didn't drink enough water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, but you got to remember that for that person, whatever this is that's going on with them, it was important enough for them to call 911. It scared them enough that, oh shit, I need help right now, 911. You know what I mean? So you cannot come into things with that attitude of, what the fuck do you want? What are you calling for? You know, this ain't nothing or whatever. Even when it is nothing. Yeah. Maybe it's something to them. Maybe their dad died of the same thing and you just don't fucking know it. And he hasn't, you know what I mean? So you have to have the same level of care for everybody, regardless of what you think they're, because this is the most important thing to them, even though it might be your 10th call like this during the day. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But I think that that's so important to so many jobs where it's like person to person, right? Because there is a sense, not to go off on a whole other thing, but it's like there is a sense of like humanity that we've lost over the last couple of years. And I feel like I just got goosebumps of like, how like important that is. Cause it's literally, you know, it's also like choosing to do a job that you're like genuinely passionate about too. And like your skill set is really like good for, you know, cause I felt that a lot in the hospital of like, and I'm just really grateful that I'm outspoken and have taught myself to like, if you don't understand something, ask. Doesn't matter if you feel inferior, like ask the question, because, and I'll get to this of like, once we got into the hospital, so let me put a pin in it. So fast forwarding, 38 weeks, and he's like, you know, we're going to go ahead and set a time to induce you, which if you're listening, you're like, what does that mean? Basically means that they induce labor. So in order to go into labor, your body starts giving off a ton of oxytocin, right? So if your body is not releasing that, it's not ready to like, you know, push the baby down. So there's a lot of different ways to induce labor, but what happened with me is they put a balloon inside of like pushing on your uterus. So it feels like the head of the baby to like push the baby down.
Dilation.
Yes. Yeah. So it's forcing dilation. Right. It's exactly right. So you basically have to be open to 10 centimeters, which is kind of like the size of a cantaloupe. Pretty big. Pretty big. In order for the baby to come out.
It's shocking when the head pops out.
Oh yeah.
How big.
I was right there and I was like, holy shit. This is mine. Really, I mean, you can't, nothing can prepare you for what it's like to watch your child enter the world from your wife's body.
Yeah.
And just to think of what has to happen with her to get to 10 centimeters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just to open a hole where there was not really a hole like that.
Well, I'll tell you what happens is your soul goes to die and it comes back. That's what happens.
Well, can I tag in something really quick?
Yeah.
Okay, so Rachel's a planner. I don't know if you could pick up on that.
Yeah.
But especially with this, and obviously, you know, pregnancy, you can only predict and plan so much. So for her, it was very important to have a natural birth. We got a doula. Shout out to Stacy Blackwell, by the way. If you're on Instagram at Modern Doula LA, she was really, really great. She helped a lot with all of this. But I think when it got to the point when you realized that your plan was the way she had planned it wasn't happening, it was like a domino effect of stress and anxiety that really just started to compound on itself.
Well, and it was, and I like
best laid plans, man.
Yeah. And like, I'm for sure, like I'm a planner, I'm a producer, I'm like that, you know, like I know how to, but also I'm an improviser. I'm, you know, where it's like, I know, I'm like, okay. And I was super open to that. Like even everyone, I'm a big proponent of like your language shapes your point of view. Right. And so the whole time people are like, oh, what's your birth plan? And I'm like, well, my preference is an unmedicated birth in a hospital with, you know, pain comfort measurements. What will happen will be whatever the fuck happens, you know?
Yes.
And so I'm glad that I did that because I was so much more prepared for a situation you cannot be prepared for, right? So we moved to induced labor. So now we went to 41 weeks because they typically want to induce you at 40 weeks. But you can still, you know, more or less give birth to a healthy baby at 41. So it's like, let's go 41 to the day. I'm going to give him another week if he decides. And he was like, nah, dog, I'm comfortable. I'm not coming out. So it was weird of like going and like packing and like checking into a hospital to be like, I'm ready to give birth sometime, you know? And the other crazy thing is to me, like you said, today is like the biggest fucking day of my life. Okay. I don't know how this is going to happen. I'm petrified, but I'm prepared. And everybody else there, we get there and nobody, like to the nurse's station, and no one comes up because they're celebrating somebody who's retiring.
I forgot about that.
So, hold on a second.
So I'm just standing there like with my bag that I've prepped and I'm prepared. And they're like, Susan, we are going to miss you. Everyone's like crying and hugging. And then literally like 3 minutes later, someone comes over and goes, sorry, she's leaving. We're all just sad. What's your name? You know, and I'm like, okay, right. Like remembering, which is good too, because I'm an only child. And so I was, you know, led to believe my whole life that like I, you know, was important, and we are, but we're not. And so that was good. And so we get checked in and I could automatically feel, because a couple days, actually the night before I was induced, I last minute went to have a massage, it was called an induction massage. And typically you can get them, you know, you tend to get them a few weeks earlier, but this was like a Hail Mary, you know? And, you know, no pun intended. I won't labor on it, but here's what happened. Okay. I'm getting this massage by this very, you know, like kind of spiritual woman, and she does like a lot of Reiki and things like that while doing these massages. And she's playing this tribal music, and I drift off and have a full-on meeting with my spirit guides. And this is what happened. All of a sudden I like am in a different space, and it's kind of like, felt like an infinity room. But it was like the color, it was like sage green. And this small indigenous woman shows up, like maybe like she kind of looks like the grandmother from Coco, if you're familiar, right? And so she kind of stares at me, and I don't say anything, and then she goes, well, this will be hard, and then turns around and starts walking and turns back and goes, come on.
Did she have a Mexican accent?
And no, no, but it was, and just kind of like walks me through, and then all of a sudden this, like the infinity room turns to, it's basically like a very traditional wigwam, and I walk through, and it's nighttime, and I'm barefoot, and on both sides are women of all different generations, just lining, and everyone's silent, and everyone's like looking at me, and I'm making eye contact and like nodding with everyone, and then I make it to the middle, and there is, I'm presuming he was like a medicine man, and he's chanting, and there was kind of like a baby wrapped up, and she was like, you know, you're scared, but he's already here. And she was like, and ooh, I just got goosebumps. And she goes, and you don't remember, but you've done this before. She was like, you've given birth so many times, you know how to do this. So she had me.
You made that connection of the fourth dimension.
Yeah, dude. So she had me pick up essentially like Jonah, and she was like, he's already here. So I want you to feel him so that you know he's already here.
And that makes sense because he's a fully formed human.
Yeah.
With thoughts of his own and everything while he's still inside of you.
Yeah.
You know?
So she's like, you know, he's here. And she was like, so this is going to be really hard. This is going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done. And she was like, so what I want you to remember is when you get too scared, I'm going to take you back to, and it was like this kind of chant. It was like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So she's like, so anytime that you, and it's weird because she was walking in front of me. She wasn't like turning and talking to me, but she's leading me through this and I could like hear what she was saying. And anyway, there was just so many more. This was like almost a 45-minute,
See, she was like the
experience.
Nurses at the hospital. She's like, come on.
Yeah,
come on.
yeah, exactly.
I know this is big for you, but I've done this much
It's
time.
fine.
This is
You've
what's
done it
going
before.
on.
It's so funny because leading up, again, once we crossed that 40 week, Rachel, every single day, Rachel was like, when is he coming? When is he coming? And honestly, it really did. Like, I was like joking. I was like, it feels like if you had a friend coming to visit, but they didn't have a phone, so they couldn't text you. Like, I'm on my way. You're just like, he'll be here at some point. And she was just getting more and more stressed and more and more stressed. And then, so I went to pick her. I dropped her off at the massage. I went to pick her up and she just sat in the car and she was just like, wow, that was, she had that just, Jonah.
Well, it radically changed the experience for me. So I knew whatever I was going into was going to be really, really tough.
But it was the first time I saw her like, I'm ready. Like before that, it was just so much anxiety. And I think after that, you sat down in the car and you were just like, I can do this now.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I have the physical tools of, I have a good connection with my doctor. My mom is there. My doula's there. Alex is there. Like, we're going to be in a hospital. So if anything goes wrong, and that was the biggest thing because I was really like, I loved the idea of a home birth. Right. Just in a big bath and all that. But I knew in the back of my mind, and I'm like, that's beautiful. And I do believe your thoughts are important and all of this, and you can have a beautiful birth. But I also believe that we have Western medicine for a reason.
Right.
And so I want to be in the place where it happens if shit goes down.
Mm-hmm. Can I just tag on to that real quick?
Please.
I understand how that can be appealing to having a birth at home. You don't have the chaos and the beeping machines and a white room with a bunch of people with masks on. And the baby, it's shocking, I would imagine, for a new life coming in, all these new experiences. And for the mom, I can see how that would be a calming thing for the mom too. And there's all this, information about a water birth being good for the baby transitioning into this world and all that stuff. I understand all that. For all you people out there, I feel you, man. My aunt had all her kids at home in her own bed and stuff, and everything went fine. When we show up to those births, though, it's because something went seriously wrong. Yeah. And there's a ton of things that can go wrong, man. A ton. And also, I have a lot of knowledge, okay? I'm able to mitigate a bunch of different medical problems and issues and stuff like that. The lower you get in age, the more difficult it is for me to do anything for you. I can't start an IV on you. I can't put a tube in your mouth to breathe for you. There's all kinds of things. I went to a home birth once where the baby had been delivered. They never cut the cord, delivered the placenta, and put the placenta in a bowl lower than the baby. So all the baby's blood started going back into the placenta. When we got there, the baby's freaking blue. And you have events like that happen where the baby dies. So I would highly recommend, if you are thinking about having birth and giving birth at home, first of all, be prepared. Not only have your doula or whoever's going to be there to guide you through the birth, but have somebody with some medical training and some IVs and some saline and stuff like that, where they can get you some fluids back into you if you need it. And I mean, shit, man, it might even be good just to notify your local fire station. Hey, we're giving birth on this night.
Oh, that's smart.
You know what I mean? If somebody called and told me that, I mean, most guys might go, oh, okay, thanks a lot, lady, and hang up the phone. But I would go, okay, cool. And I would know next shift at about this time, this chick in our district is having a baby. I might expect something at that point.
And I'll just tag onto that. The whole pregnancy, it was super easy. I mean, literally the only thing that was even kind of a complication was that he was late. But there wasn't a single thing that...
Yeah. That's what also creeped me out. You know what I mean? Because I don't believe in fairy tales.
It's too quiet
and I'm
in
like,
here.
yes. Where I was like, shit is it's too easy.
I mean, even to the point where... because if the baby's active, it's a good sign. Even to the point where we went to one ultrasound and our OB is like, wow, he's really moving in there. Okay. And even with all of that, Rachel can expand on it more, but if we had done a home birth, I don't know if they would be here.
Yeah.
Well, and but the other thing that I tagging into what you're saying that I want to share, which is if you advocate for yourself, you can have a calming to an extent birth in a hospital. Right. I mean, you can create, sure, there's protocol, there's going to be people coming in much more regularly and all that. You're not going to be able to change the hospital system, but you can create an atmosphere. I mean, I was very surprised. Obviously, it's Los Angeles, so I'm sure they deal with a lot of, alternative asks, but we made like a birth plan. And so it was like, they knew not to ask me this. It's all low lighting, all of those things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm there. They induce me. I can feel my anxiety going up. I'm like, shit, isn't it? Because I knew now something was going to happen. Mama Bear came and visited me. She let me know. I'm like, I don't know what to expect. And I'm going to look at medical professionals and go, hey, so a woman in a wigwam visited me last night. Yeah. She said,
I know you're going to fuck up, buddy. All right.
Something's going to go wrong. She told me, I don't know what it is, but be on the lookout. Like how the fuck,
Yeah.
And so I just knew. I don't even think I'd fully told anybody else. I just knew. So they induced me, which is pretty painful. So they have what's called that Foley balloon. Yeah. And that, and that took about...
They gave you Pitocin too.
Yes. Yeah. So then, so there's the kicker. So they give me the Foley balloon, and they also use Pitocin, which is synthetic oxytocin. Right. Now, everyone that I had spoken to was like, hey, if they put you on Pitocin, you're going to want to get an epidural because Pitocin, essentially what would be a regular contraction, makes it the Super Bowl.
So I'll just tack onto that because I was like, babe, are you sure? You don't? Because she didn't want one. She really, really, really didn't want one. She's like, I want to be alert for my baby. I don't do good on painkillers. I really don't want it. And I'm like...
Because basically what an epidural does is it takes away the pain, but then you have no navigation in your body to know what's happening because you can't feel anything.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I was like, my anxiety will be less if I can feel what's happening. I can deal with the pain. No, not Pitocin. So we did a solid, I think I lasted 8 or 9 hours.
Oh, man.
Wow. Yeah. I will say, towards the end there, the sounds that Rachel was making, I don't think I've heard them from any human being before.
Yeah. Wow. Like Princess Bride, the rack, the machine level.
I mean, they were really like guttural. And so probably at about 1 a.m., we checked into the hospital at 1 p.m. So this is now hour 12. I started chanting and I started doing, and I didn't even notice at first that I was doing it. And I started doing the chant because I had to go back into that wigwam because it was also like, the pain is so visceral, even having your eyes open or anything is too much. Like there's just too much data that you're taking in. So in order to reserve any energy, I was like, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to sit in this wigwam surrounded by all of these women and I'm going to walk this baby out. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And that lasted until my body was literally being ripped in half. Yeah. And it was 3 a.m. and I knew I had nothing left. And so I was like, well, let's check and see how dilated I am. Based on the pain, I'm like, I'm for sure at an 8.
Yeah, I'm like 18 inches by now.
For sure. Yeah. And once you get to 8, you can get to 10 in like no time. So I'm like, if I'm at 8, like we're going to cruise through this. Yeah. They come in, she goes, you're at 4.5.
Son of a...
Dude, mama's not even halfway there yet. Man. And I was like, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been so excited to see just a tiny Asian man. Dr. Kim came in and he was so lovely, because I'm sure he deals with women yelling and screaming and all sorts of things. And he was so kind. And he's like, I'm going to have to ask you a series of questions, because then my anxiety again, where they give you an epidural, which if you're not familiar, that's a needle in your back.
Yeah, right in your spine.
And it's a lot of stuff can also go wrong. So he's like, I need you to blink, make sure you can see, and ask me all these things. And then about 15 minutes later, I was like, and that
Thank
physical
God.
relief was like insane.
Oh, it hits.
And then I also then begin to process like what the fuck has been happening for 13 hours. Like I'm back in my body oddly, and everybody's looking at me and they're like, yeah, we're tired. And so, they put us, everybody goes to sleep and, then a couple hours later, it's like, the morning time and doc comes by and he's like, okay, how we doing? He's like, so, we're getting to the part now, we're going to labor you down, which basically means if your epidural is still too great, they can either have you, the medicine essentially wears off in your system so you can feel a little bit more, or you can decide to get more.
Yeah.
Well, I had exerted so much energy in my physical body by not taking an epidural sooner that I was like, I think I need some more meds. Like I got to really rest my body.
Sure, yeah.
So then they give me more. So this is where it talks about, people who are used to doing their job all the time don't know to say like, hey, you're going to be really high when we give you more. Yeah. So all of a sudden I'm like on the side of the bed, And I'm like puking. And I was like, oh, I can't even. So I called the nurse and I was like, I don't think this is right. And she was like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. This is totally normal and everything's fine. I just do this all the time. I forgot to tell you. And I'm like, okay, well, I forgot to tell you that this is awful. So if you can lower it down. So then they finally get me to like stasis. And I'm like, all right, we're going to do this. So also the crazy thing to me is like, they don't teach you how to push. Like in the movies, right? It's just like a woman who's screaming and she knows how to do it. Apparently, this is false, okay? 35 years of conditioning, that's not how it works. Yeah. So another nurse comes in and she like explains to me what I'm gonna do. And this is the most natural thing you would think to do. So she's like, okay, so your husband's gonna hold one leg up, your doula's gonna hold the other, and you basically, I have to also keep in mind, like at this point, I'm at about 200 pounds, from having this baby and everything. And it's just dead weight that everybody's holding up because you're paralyzed, essentially temporarily paralyzed. So they're holding up both legs up to my chest. You still have this giant belly, baby's like ready to come out. Okay. And they're like, and you need to sit up and then you put your chin down. And every time a contraction is coming, when it hits that peak, what you do is you breathe in and then you push out 3 times, but you don't let your air out. So
I don't even know if I can remember to do that at all. Yeah.
So they both have my legs up, but I'm still holding their legs up. My chin is down, my back is up, and then, okay, ready and push. So I go, breathe in, and then I push out 3 different times as hard as I can. And you push out like you're pushing out a poop. And then that's what you do. And then you rest and then you do it again. And we did that for 2 hours.
Oh my God.
For 2 hours. And everybody's like, are you okay? Like, I think everyone's shocked that this is happening. Yeah. This is also an hour 24 of this labor. Yeah. Okay. And so go ahead.
I was just going to say, because I was so delusional from lack of sleep.
Sure,
I kind of dozed off here and there, but dude, my wife is in the worst pain she's ever been. We had the doctors and a doula and everything, but even so, it's like, how much can you sleep with all that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm trying to be supportive and I'm like giving her words of affirmation and, but there was one point during the because she would take a break and then they'd be like, all right, we're going to push now. And then me and the doula Stacy would grab both of her legs and pull them back. And there was one point where I kind of was like zoning out, so tired, and she just goes like, hold my fucking leg. Well, I kind of hesitated, and she's like, get in the game, do it, come on.
Hey, this is go time, man. We're at the 1 yard line.
He walked away and picked his phone up as though we hadn't been doing this for an hour and 45 minutes. And I didn't. I go, what are you doing? Get your head in the game.
Yeah. I posted about this an hour ago, babe. I want to see if anyone's.
I was like, what are you worried about your likes right now? Like, sir, we've got a situation. So then, the other nurse was really great, and she was like, hey, so we're you're about to start crowning, so we're going to actually start pushing for real. I'm like, what the fuck have we been doing for the last? What do you mean for real? And that's what's crazy, the stages of labor, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, it's like, I felt safe because I was like, okay, he's coming, he's okay. Because I also, when they checked me in, I had preeclampsia, which is... Google it. I don't have the time to explain it, but it was bizarre that I ended up having it. And I think it was almost self-induced because of my anxiety. My blood pressure went up.
Blood pressure gets sky high.
Yes. And
it's
I think
pretty dangerous thing. Yeah, it can be a very serious thing.
And I believe it was self-induced from my anxiety.
Yeah.
So anyway, Doc was like, it's fine. If we had known that we were going to induce you anyway, you're in the safest place you can be. So we've jumped all these fucking hurdles, right? So I'm like, this baby's coming. We're good. So that's where I was like, had this, essentially energy from, Jesus or something. I'm like, we're going to do it. And so she explains to me, now all of these other people are going to join the room. And I feel like if I was to do Labor the Musical, this is when, people fall from the sky and because all of a sudden, Doc comes in, pushes a button and a thing comes down and then those giant lights and then other people join in and,
a needle comes straight at your eyeball.
Yeah. That part I will say for me too, I was like, whoa. Cause it's go time. And at that point I think, I don't know if our OB was in yet, but it was one point where I remember looking and seeing, I could see his head starting to crown. Yeah. And for me, I was like, holy shit, this is real. Now it's really real.
And it was also
funny. Real at that point for him.
Right. Yeah. but then, they pulled open this thing in the ceiling and this giant light comes out and these other contraptions. And it was, like Rachel said, it was like a whole stage production. Yeah. All these new people we'd never seen show up in the room, and they're like, and I'm like, oh, wow. It just was really funny to see. Oh, and you know what kind of reminded me of, like, when like NASCAR, when the car pulls over and the team comes, it was like that for her. Yeah.
Because that's the thing. There's the people coming for the baby. There was no baby yet, so they don't have to check on anybody. They'll be there for you.
And so that was like another thing that I didn't know. And so I was grateful because I was very clear of every single thing they did. I said, tell me what you're doing and tell me what this does. Because they're just doing their routine job.
Yeah. Right.
And, luckily I was very, very blessed in this part of the experience to have really great nurses. Right. So once I had asked for that and advocated what I needed, like every single thing they went to do, they would explain and let me know what was happening.
It's good for young paramedics out there too, man, to make sure that you verbalize everything you're doing.
Just narrate what you're doing. Great. Now we're going to give you an IV. This is just fluids. It's okay. You don't need to be, like whatever those things are, because it's also like trying to even talk somebody down isn't helpful, but telling them what they're doing and you're talking to them, you're not focusing on the anxiety. We're just focusing on the task. Right?
Sure.
And so, so Cirque du Soleil happens. All these things are here. And then the charge nurse came in and, she kind of such a Karen, God bless her, but she comes in and then like, we've already got a system here. Okay. Nurse Ashley, like she comes in and she's like, doesn't introduce herself to me. And she's like, okay, so like, this is how we're going to push. It's the first time I opened my eyes because I was so annoyed. Like, no. You don't introduce yourself to me. We got a whole rigmarole going here. Okay. Ashley, we don't need you. So I opened my
Ash.
Yeah. And so I literally opened my eyes and I looked at her and I go, no, I know when these contractions are coming. I'm the one that's leading the push. If something else is happening, you let me know. Otherwise, we've got it going. Ready? Yeah. And close my eyes and we kept doing it. So and it was hilarious when Alex saw Jonah crowning. It was like, I totally could see Alex as like, it was like the frat version of Alex just isolated in time. Cause he was like, oh, I'm like, dude, this baby's coming. I'm like, yeah, it's real, babe. This is how he's coming.
I think it's a good a thing that you keep bringing up, advocating for yourself, man, because you got to also realize that these are just human beings that you're dealing with. I know she's got a white coat on, but, and they're a doctor and they know what they're doing and stuff, but they're humans, you know what I mean? And sometimes when you're in that profession or, you lose track of that human aspect of it, and cause there's lives on the line, obviously, but they're humans. You got to tell them, hey, this is my human experience, take that into account and give me what I need, please.
I just remember this part too. When you were saying earlier how, when you've delivered babies and you're like, I don't want to do that. I'm not an OB. Yeah. Even the nurses that were there to help, because when he was crowning, or when he was about to come out, and she was so great. I think her name was Annalise, I believe. Yeah. And she was like, okay, I'm going to go grab the doctor because I really don't want to deliver your baby. Yeah. And it was like, dude, nobody except for the OB, like nobody wants to do it. And I get it, man. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's partly because so many things can go wrong.
Oh, yes. Well, like we'll get to that next.
Yeah. Here's the climax.
Here we go.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, so they're like, okay, Dr. Dennis is coming. And again, that idea of like, you need people who make you feel calm. And he came in and he's like, okay, we're going to do it. But I had never seen Dr. Dennis do his job.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And so it was so interesting, like I feel like that way, like some people, when they see you before and then they see you on stage and then after they're like, I didn't know you could fucking do that, know? And it's like, it's like you switching into, like Power Ranger mode. Right? Yeah, exactly. You do your fucking job. And so, I was like, okay, we're good. We're in safe hands. And I think then when we were ready to push, we did 3 pushes and he was out.
Yeah.
And they, put him on.
He put that shoehorn in there.
Dude,
popped right out, right?
I mean, it was shocking, just like how big they get you open and 1, 2, 3. And my doula taped it. So it was wild to like taped it. What is it? 86. She filmed it. I don't know, on her iPhone. And so it was wild to watch it after of like, he just like slipped out and they put him on my chest. And it really was that moment of like, I think you only really experience those things.
She started sobbing immediately, understandably, but it was like sobbing.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I think it was like just immense gratitude of like, we're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 fingers, 10 toes, and they're crying.
Yeah. And I'm just like, and having no real idea. I mean, maybe some people are like, I felt so connected in the womb and this. I didn't. Yeah. I knew that he was there and I wanted to protect him and I loved him and we talked to him, we read to him, but I wasn't like...
But you don't know him yet. He could be a dick.
I'm like, I don't know. I would say that all the time on our podcast. Everyone's like, are you excited? I'm like, I don't know. Could be an asshole. I don't know him yet, you know? And so that moment where they put him there and like I look down and he's looking at me and I'm like, you know me. Like how, you know, and that feeling I was not prepared for.
Well, that skin to skin contact when they first come out is so important, man. They can hear and feel your heartbeat, which is a common sense. I mean, I would imagine, you know, in your body, that's probably a constant in their life. And so, oh shit, this is shocking. What the hell's going on? I can't really see. Everything's cold. And then, oh, okay, I'm home. I'm cool.
Yeah,
you know
we're okay.
And it just helps that anxiety with the baby and mom. It also helps to deliver the placenta and all the afterbirth things that happen.
Yep.
So let's get into that.
So we deliver him and he's on my chest and then I know that everything else is going on, but it does become like portrait mode on your phone. Like I'm in focus, he's in focus, everything else is blurred. Right. And then I can hear I just heard Doc go, wow, those are some big floppers. Cause his feet were like, he's now grown into them, but they were wildly long. Just looked like a tadpole. And then I know that the placenta was delivered. And then and we did a delayed cord cutting, which is not what you experienced, what you shared earlier. Right. But typically they'll do it for about a minute. They don't want to do it longer than that for that exact reason of blood flows the wrong way. And so we did, slightly delayed. And I remember out of my peripheral, Alex cutting the cord and having this, beautiful moment and sharing it with Dr. Dennis and all these things. And then I just remember the mood changed immediately. And so my remembrance of what happened is, so I start bleeding out, essentially. I start hemorrhaging, which is fairly common, which is also why the majority of women that have died in childbirth, that is the reason why, is from hemorrhaging. And in fact, sadly, Alex's father lost his mother when she gave birth to the baby died as well, right?
Oh man.
Wow. So I always kind of had that in the back of my mind and was my biggest fear, which was why I chose to give birth in the hospital. Because I was like, I don't know why, but I keep coming back to this and it just feels real. So there was a part of me where I was like, if this is how I go, Jonah is safe. My mom is here. It was that moment of almost like kind of in between like subconscious and conscious. Like I was conscious I was here, but I was like, if this is a moment where I go, like I'm okay. Like there was like this sense of peace. So I remember feeling fairly calm, but I knew, so my mom is also a nurse practitioner and really did the best she could to curb her anxiety the whole way through that. Like there was at one point when I was still in the Pitocin without an epidural and I go, if you need to step out of the room, the time is now. And she was like, I'm not anxious. I was like, I can feel it coming off of you. And so I could feel my mom really knew something was going on. Dr. Dennis, I hear him and he's like, the blood is not stopping. He basically up to his elbows was inside of me because I was bleeding out so bad and they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So they call a code, then they call another code. And so more and more people come in. Now there's somebody who's on top of me, like helping Doc, and my doula is just on one side going, just stay with your baby. Just stay with your baby. And it's this 7 minutes about where like I won't stop bleeding. And I basically hear Dr. Dennis be like, because they're like, do we need a mover? Do we need a mover? They were going to move me to surgery immediately because if they can't figure it out, it's like they got to put me under.
See where the blood's coming from.
And to figure it out. And so
that was a very not fun 7 minutes.
I mean, I can imagine.
I remember
it felt like a lifetime.
It did, but it did. But the thing that helped me like focus on, I was like, all right, everyone who needs to deal with this is here right now dealing with it. There's literally nothing else to do other than just be with my wife. So I was just like hyper laser focused on like talking to Rachel, rubbing the baby, and in my head, I'm just being like, everybody who's here is doing what they can, like what else are you going to do?
And that's your job in there as a dad. Yeah. There's really not much you can do other than help you mentally and, help you
but
through
then you
this.
have that thought in the back of your head and you're like, holy fuck, man, am I going to like get my son and lose my wife in the same hour? Like, thank God, it didn't. And again, Dr. Dennis and his team did a phenomenal job, but there's not a lot of times in my life I felt that way. And it was a very, I don't know. It was like almost like surreal to like try and like process like this overload of happiness and anxiety, like all like at the same time. And it was just,
I will say that like Molly will never compare. You know what I mean? Like any like dopamine drop that I could ever engage in ever again, I'd be like, I've had a baby. This feels like nothing.
Well, there was one, I don't do well with blood. I haven't seen a lot of it, but like I now know for sure I don't do well with it. But I remember at one point I looked back and there was like a bucket full of blood.
So by the time it was said and done, I essentially lost 1 liter of blood.
Oh,
Whoa.
And they were able to, essentially it was like uteral lacerations. So basically which this is fairly common, I guess. I also didn't learn all this until my like 8-week checkup with doc, because again, this is what is hilarious to me. You know, I work in entertainment. So you ask me anything, I know everything about it. Most other fields, I don't really know a lot about it unless I've listened to a podcast, right?
Right.
So it's so wild of like, it's this moment of we're about to have to move this woman to surgery. I'm literally up to like my, elbow in her. And then all of a sudden he just goes, okay, we got it. And then like waited a minute to make sure it was good. He's like, okay, great, beautiful baby. Bye guys. And then just like leaves to go
that was
lunch.
the other part.
I got a Laker game to get to.
Yeah, because like, and so when I looked over and saw that blood, I was like, man, that was a bad idea. Because in my head, I'm like, don't look. And I looked, of course. Then I'm like, I should not have done that. But then you're right, the casualness of like, okay, well, good to go. See you guys later. Yeah. And it was just like, he rolls out, there's like one nurse that stayed to like take care of Jonah for a second. But there's really just like me, my mother-in-law, Rachel. I think at that point too, like our doula left shortly after, and I was like, I guess we just like live our lives now.
That's the wildest thing. Like I'm still like, processing it and things like that. And I feel like I've not had the experience yet of being with somebody as they leave us, as they transition. And I would imagine there's a lot of the same emotion, because it literally is the most human experience that I've had. It was crazy, but it was those 7 minutes of please remain calm. Yeah. And it was that of like, true surrender now of going, there's something bigger than me. There's nothing else I can do. And the woman in the wigwam was not wrong. This is going to be hard.
Believe it or not, I've had a patient like this that did a home birth. And when we showed up, the doula had her hand up there. So there's a bathtub in the living room. It's completely filled with what looked like blood. I mean, it was water mixed with blood, probably. She's covered in blood, dry blood, because she got out of the tub. The doula's up to here, just like you. And we're like, okay, it's, I don't know, the 10th one of these that I've had, home births that turn bad, that you have to go. This was probably the most serious, aside from the 2 that passed. But you usually walk in there and go, okay, great, another one of these. Let's go to the hospital right now. I don't do anything on scene. Yep. Walk in, take the baby, take the mom, go. So the doula looks up and goes, okay, somebody has to stick their hand in here. I go, no, we don't. We're putting 2 pads and we're driving really fast. Right. Yeah. And that's what we did. I started an IV, started giving her fluid, put 2 pads down there, hold your legs together. We're going right now. Well, my birth plan is to be at this. We're going to the closest hospital right now. You need help right now. Yeah. And we go. But just another cautionary tale, if you're thinking about having a baby, I understand it all. Do what's best for you, but I would highly recommend you have the baby at a hospital.
Yeah. I mean, it was just crazy of like, and even all of the things of like, something with my preeclampsia could have taken off into another place. I could have had a negative reaction to Pitocin. I could have like, had a negative reaction to an epidural. Like there's just so many things that are out of your control. And
I used to look at my son's pinky toe. Thank God, how fucking crazy is this that you have a toenail right here? That like we have the blueprints and the plans in our stuff that goes together, and it remembers to make this tiny little toenail. Like that is the craziest shit to me. All the things that can go wrong with pregnancy, with the birth itself, after the kid is born. They try to kill themselves for like 2 years until they figure out what's safe and what's not. You know what I mean? So many things that can go wrong and that need to go right to have a healthy, happy baby. And it doesn't always go right for everybody, man. It's a dangerous thing. It's a very complicated process to give birth, and you need to set yourself up for success, I think.
Yes.
And my biggest unsolicited piece of advice is being like, that's exactly right. Of like, all you can do is prepare. And on the day, all you do is call audibles.
Yeah.
And that's it, because it is anxiety inducing. You don't know what's going to happen. And some people do have like beautiful, very like easy births, but for the most part, you don't. It is a wild thing, and it should scare the shit out of you.
The other thing also that happened shortly after that, so they get her stitched up, bleeding stops, and it's like, whew, okay, we're out of that. And then they're like, oh, we got to take him to the NICU. His blood pressure's dropping like real fast. So
it
it's
was
like
16, and it was supposed to be about 60 to 90.
Yeah. So it's like, okay. So that moment of like, oh, okay, we're over this nonsense. And then it's like, oh, Jesus, now we got to do,
Yeah,
so then like he's in the NICU, she's downstairs because she's recovering from, getting stitched up. I haven't slept in like 36 hours. Yeah. And it's like, so it all worked out okay.
Telling your friends, I just went through the toughest thing, man.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I will say,
she's like, you got to be shitting me.
Pretty much the only time I'd ever been in a hospital was this. I mean, my grandfather passed in hospice in like an old folks home. That was like the closest thing. But our, what they call charge nurses, they were amazing, like phenomenal. But then as soon as we got to like the general floor and it was like, you're here for a couple days to recover. I mean, it was like comical. I thought it was like I was on Punk'd. I couldn't believe the drop in like quality of, no disrespect, but like the nursing staff.
You can say where you were if you want.
They just, our charge nurses were amazing.
Yeah.
And
well, it just gets back to what I've said a number of times on the show, man, is you get jaded with shit. And you get into a mode of just doing nuts and bolts, and you forget that you're dealing with human beings with emotions.
Well, I always say that where, it's like a joke of like when I get on a plane, I always like it better when the pilot's standing there when I'm getting on, so I can do one of these. How are we? Okay. Are you going through a divorce? What are we like? What are we dealing with here? Okay.
Yeah. Why is your left eye droopy, buddy?
I need you to be focused. And it's true of like, and I always say that where I'm like, we really, especially I feel like in the climate we're in right now, it's like, oh, we're so divided. People are idiots. Oh, this and that. And I'm like, no, it's other human beings that make all of the systems. Like the reason that I know this is silly, but it's like, the reason like you can go and like get milk at Trader Joe's is because a human made sure that got there. Like the reason that you can go to a doctor and hopefully leave alive is because somebody took care of you. Like, I think that we are capable of so many, miraculous things that we just don't give each other credit for.
Yeah.
Well, there was just like one point on the, with the, I guess they're called general nurses. I don't know. The ones that were catering to Rachel when she was recovering. Yeah. And there was like one point, so they had a wheelchair so she could get around because she couldn't walk for a couple of days. And the one nurse couldn't get the wheelchair in the room. And I was just thinking like, isn't this like your job? Like you couldn't, it's just getting the chair. There wasn't anything else in the doorway. It was just the doorway. Like, I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah.
And then another nurse had to come in and like, and then I think at one point you got up or like, didn't get up, but you like sat up.
I, again, as the producer and the planner, and the fact that these two nurses couldn't figure out how to get me into the wheelchair around this IV because she wasn't going to let me go down to the NICU. And I was like, no, I don't think you understand. My son was just taken off of my chest and taken downstairs. I don't know the severity of this. I'm going down there. And she was like, well, you have to go with your IV. I go, I don't care how I have to go down there.
Yeah.
Like, what are you, like, what planet are you on this morning? Hello? Anyway, so I had to like stop them because they couldn't figure it out. And I finally go, I'm sorry. I think literally like this, I go, I'm sorry, I have to stop us. Here's what we're going to do. And like directed them of how to get me in this wheelchair to get me down there. I'm like, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm. Another thing for having the baby in the hospital though, you had to go to the NICU.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no NICU at your house.
I was like, that's a different podcast for a different day. But that was really traumatic.
And that's something to keep on account too, man, is once the baby's born, we got 2 patients now.
Yep.
Yeah,
because as much as you can have complications, the baby can have complications.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's something to consider where you have your baby or which hospital, because they don't all have NICUs and not all NICUs are the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely learned a lot. And I feel like, it's like, how non-efficient our healthcare system is, and that's a conversation for a different day. But I think also if choosing to give birth in a hospital, or even just going into hospitals, even if you're dealing with somebody who's terminally ill in your family or all these different things, the biggest thing is of like, ask every question. It doesn't matter if it seems stupid. It doesn't matter if you're annoying them. Like, you don't need them to like you. Okay. Sure. You need them to do their job. And, it's like really being comfortable asking all of those questions and, and
the
really
squeaky wheel gets the oil, man.
Dude, for real. Yeah. And it was a huge, huge reminder for me. And, you know, I know specifically with women too, that's a thing, like we're not taught. I think it's changing now, but we're not taught to ask questions. We're not taught, you know, and especially so many women are like, oh my God, you let your husband watch? Like, I would never. Like, then Peter, I'm like, if your husband doesn't want to fuck you after you have a baby, like, I don't think your marriage is going to last. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what else to tell you. Right. I understand if it's uncomfortable or whatever, but like, you know, so there's just a lot that I think women don't advocate for themselves enough. I don't think that they, you know, to me, I'm like, you are going into a little bit of a battle, and you have to really be prepared for what that is. And being nice is not going to get you through it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Amazing story. I mean, thank you so much for coming on
having
and
us,
talking
guys.
about
This
it.
was so fun.
You guys were awesome.
And I just want to reiterate, especially for guys out there, if your girlfriend or your wife is pregnant, just pause and soak all that in, everything that she's going through. Talk to her about what she's going through, because a lot of times, just like you said, society, you know, some people don't like talking about their feelings, or depending on how your wife grew up or was raised, maybe her family didn't express these emotions to each other and stuff like that. And so giving her the ability to do that with you as a husband, not only will it connect you more to the entire pregnancy throughout, but what a way to bond with your wife, you know what I mean? And share these emotions with her and be a grounding, positive force in her life when she's going through something that, I'm telling you, man, it is the most amazing thing to watch. And it gave me an entirely new respect for my wife. And really just women in general, the ability to grow this human life inside of your body, man, and go through all that and come out the other end. I mean, you know, postpartum depression is another thing because of all of those emotions and all those things that happen that stick with you afterwards already. And it's a very serious thing. So it's just another way to help deal with that. And if you do have a baby, be aware of that after the baby's there too, because you wind up, you can't imagine how much you love your children, man, when they come out. You can't even really prepare yourself for it, or how much you would give of yourself for them. And you can give all of that's emotion and love that you were training on your wife, and now it's all trained on this little human. And so that can be a depressing thing for your wife as well. Yeah. So I just wanted to state that, man. Pregnancy and birth, it's a beautiful, amazing
I second
thing.
all that.
Yeah, man.
Oh yeah.
But thank you so much. I know that a lot of times these are difficult things to talk about, but you tell it so well, man. And with all of our episodes, I feel like there's things that young firefighters, paramedics, but also parents and just regular people out there can take from each episode and stick it in their toolbox for when they have a baby. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks
Alex,
for having us, you guys.
Appreciate
thank
you
you for staying quiet over there, little guy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Jonah, you did a very good job.
Do you guys want to give your Instagrams? Where can they find you at?
Sure. We have a production company called Skewed Orbit Productions. So you can find us on all social media at Skewed Orbit. We've got a podcast together called Common Ground. It's a morning show. You can find that on all social media at Common Ground Morning Show. Individually, we are Rachel Laforce, and you can find me at Rachel Laforce and
at Alex Gettlin. ALEXGETTLIN. And yeah, just follow us. We're always doing live shows around LA, and we tour occasionally. Less now with the baby. We're working on figuring out like a little family stand-up tour. So we go to Cleveland, Atlanta quite often because of family, but we tour all over. So follow us if you like stand-up.
yeah.
All right. That was a good sign off.
Yeah, it's really good.
You guys have like firefighters on and like, I don't know. No, my wife doesn't let me.
You guys can reach me or follow me at DannyGonzo34 on Instagram and Twitter.
Follow me at Ben9Humor, Ben number 9 Humor, like benign humor on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow the show at PRC Pod on Instagram and Twitter, or at PRC Podcast on TikTok. You can also email us, contactprcpod@gmail.com. We have merch, t-shirts and stickers, shit like that. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Hey. All right. Hey. Yeah, I mean. Hey. Please do remain calm. About to run against it and with a little bit of soul, no times.